while we introduce additional speakers to join us. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ugo, Adesola. I don't know if Dr. Teddy was able to join. He sent his apologies. He might be joining late. So we'll just go on while waiting for him to join us. Ugo, this is not your first time identifying with this brand. Last year, you were a supporter. You know, Nairametrics was a media partner. And this year, again, you're here as a speaker. We do appreciate you, Ugo. Thanks for joining us. Can we have Ugo as well?
Always a pleasure. Hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Awesome. We can hear you. And Adesola, this is the first time we're having you here on DBNC. Thank you as well for joining us. It's an honor to also have you. So before we move on to the panel discussion, that's the questions, I would just like to take your general view on the topic, business strategy and execution in an emerging market. So we'll start with Ugo and then we can have that of Adesola. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Linda. Thanks so much for having me, and great to be here. It was also very instructive listening to Paul. I mean, he dropped so many nuggets. I was just taking some down here. Like, it's not all the time you get to hear people like this speak. So it was really fascinating. I mean, business strategy and particularly execution, it's very important for any business, particularly startups. If you're just starting a business, one of the most critical paths to maturity, maturity being, you know, people would say that if you're a small business and you can go through the first 5 years without failing, then at least you've survived a very huge, aspect of your journey towards maturity. So that first 5 years, strategy and execution is very, very, very important. And for a lot of the people that I've met and that I've spoken to, that I've also mentored, that's usually where things get missing. Because if you are not able to have a very solid strategy, then it's very difficult to execute. And strategy would typically start with goals. So, Paul had mentioned you having a vision, trying to solve some, a problem, right? So you've got to be able to articulate that problem into goals, achievable goals. So once you have goals and you're fixated on those goals, then you start to figure out what your strategy is for implementing, those goals. And then within each strategy, you're building, initiatives that can help you achieve those. And then very important as well is you being able to measure how, you're also executing. You have timelines to every single thing that you're doing. Now, without this, it's just very, very difficult for any business to survive. And ask any, even a market woman who is uneducated, they all have strategies. It's just inside them. But for the kind of world we're in today, important that you have this thing very well articulated and documented, and then keep iterating, because once you know what your strategy is and you're very fixated on your goal, you know what's not working, and you can easily just fix them, tweak them, pivot if you need to pivot. But what is very clear is the goal that you're trying to achieve in that.
Very interesting view you've just shared, Ugo. And I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to start asking them now because we would move into the panel session. So let me just take a quick quick view of Adesola just after you. So Adesola, kindly go ahead.
Thank you, Linda, for having me here. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, loud and clear.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. So my overview would really be around, I think the keynote speaker, really nailed it down, made it very simple for everybody to follow, took a lot of notes as well. So thank you so much for setting the tone. For me, mainly been in the manufacturing sector. So my responses will be mainly based on manufacturing, which I think it's a sector that is probably bleeding in this space. So when you look at the manufacturing sector, I think we all have very great strategies. The strategies are probably the same. I've worked on a couple of manufacturing businesses, from the drinks business to producing of soaps, soups, and toothpaste. And now I'm in the hair industry now. So the strategy is always really the same. I think where one would have a competitive advantage would be around the execution of the strategy. And I think a lot of us struggle in that aspect, obviously due to some internal and external factors, but mainly external factors in the industry in which we operate. So when you have a strategy and then a policy or a regulatory policy comes in place, and then that sets you back from your strategy or how you wanted to execute. So for me, there'll be three things that I would say is around avoiding distractions. So when you have a strategy and you're very clear on the execution, it's just really going behind and executing irrespective of distractions that you might have along the way. And then sometimes I think lack of resilience, sometimes we give up easily. So you have challenges in some areas, and then you think you need to go back and re-strategize. And then you lose a lot of time going back, re-strategizing, and then coming back to probably almost similar to what you had in the past. And I think having competent resources that are very resilient is very critical. But I think for me as a whole, I would think the strategies are there. The execution is really where we need to spend a lot of time and be focused. And then when we go into the Q&A, there'll be some nuggets that I would like to share in that space. Yeah.
Okay. So when you were talking about policies, I mean, it's not enough to have your strategies, right? You also need to take into consideration the policies that exist in that environment. I was then thinking about some of the institutional voids that exist in Nigeria. For example, our educational system right now, university ASU is on strike, right? And we have issues around security. We have, policies that don't even enable small businesses have access to certain currencies, right? There's so many things in place that work against small businesses. Can we have the keynote speaker back spotlighted, please? So there's so many things at play that work against small businesses. Some businesses would say it could also be a problem, so you can think of a solution around it. So with all of this, how then can businesses build competitive advantage despite some of this institutional void that exists in our environment? So I'd like to take the view of Pio, Ugo, and then Adesola in that order.
Thank you, Linda. So I've spoken about all the challenges, and I suppose if I were to sort of list the biggest challenges, is the enabling environment. Is are you in an environment that actually wants your business to succeed and helps your business succeed? And I think that's the one challenge that one has to try to focus on how they deal with, because it's just a challenge that we don't have control over. You know, we have control over some of the infrastructure around us. We have control over our human resources. We have some control over the finance, even the rule of law. But the enabling environment is down to other people. But I would say I think it's important in any business. I mean, you'll have your pluses and your minuses. You'll have the challenges. You'll have the tough things. It's important in any business to look at the entire value chain, right? So I always say to people that if there's someone that's selling juice, right? Someone needs to grow the fruit. Someone needs to transport the fruit. Someone needs to package it, and someone needs to wrap it. So there's a whole value chain in business, and some of them, and when your business, and that's why I say businesses must be scalable, when your business goes across a large value chain, then you're not subject to the vagaries in any one point. So even if one area is down, there are 3 or 4 areas that are up. So I'm basically saying, look, don't compromise on your excellence. Be excellent, but try to bat in more than one part of the value chain of your business and focus on that. And I think it helps you to reduce your single point risk.
All right, so if I can come in as well, I mean, I think Pio just excellently described it. But I'll just add a few more things as well. In Nigeria, having a competitive advantage can be very difficult, especially where you don't have the monopoly of execution. So different people also have access to the same kind of tools that you have, and would definitely want to outcompete you if they do some of the following. So I've often spoken to cost. I think the kind of environment that we're in today, having a competitive advantage largely depends on how cost efficient you are. In this business, in this environment where inflation is rising every day. So it's pretty obvious that businesses that can't manage their cost or take ownership of their cost value chain will typically die. And that just happens all the time. So it's more important now that you're very cost conscious, that you look at your entire value chain and then look at all those cost components that you can do without, and then the ones that you can manage, and then see how you can streamline that cost. Now, something else that also gives competitive advantage as well is compliance. And we live in a very regulated world now. So whether you're trying to raise capital, or you're trying to sell products to certain kind of people, or you're trying to deal with governments, who are your key stakeholders, being able to comply with all the several rules that surround your business is also very important, because that also gives you some kind of competitive advantage. So you might decide, you don't want to be, answerable to the government, but you find out that you are answerable to society. So it's either social media drags you, or where your business is, the people around there start to drag you. So you've got to be compliant in one way or another, because that sort of helps you also focus on how you're executing. And then, of course, sales as well. Selling is very important. And, one thing about selling is, how do you constantly innovate and use technology to determine what your customers actually want? I think that's very important, because in the past, what you typically just do is just have a product and just keep selling it because you think people always want to buy it. But today, competitive advantage has gone beyond that. It's now gone into digital identity, understanding your customers better, understanding their needs, and being able to streamline products to them such a way that they can keep buying, and you can have sticky customers. So it's a range of all these things. So once you're able to tie some of these things together, and then I think that you would at least have competitive advantage over your customers, and then even potentially new entrants as well, because these days you're not only competing with people that are in the same kind of business with you, you're also competing with new entrants. And then guess what? You're also competing with people who are in different businesses but are looking for new growth areas. So today you have an MTN that is awash with so much cash, and you know what? They just want to go beyond just selling recharge cards. They want to start doing, PSB, mobile banking. They want to go into properties. They want to go into power, because they've realized that every customer that they have is a touch point. So if I know a Linda, then if I'm selling recharge card to Linda, then I might as well just sell anything else to her, because that's what the likes of Facebook and Google do. So it's just understanding that competition now is not just around the people that you know, it's beyond that.
Adesola?
Thank you. Thank you. So from my own view, I think competitive advantage is very difficult and very difficult. And I'm right on what Ugo was saying in compliance. So organizations want to be compliant to the rules, the land in which they operate, find it far more difficult than organizations that are willing to cut corners. Looking at the manufacturing sector as well, I think it's very, very difficult when you're working in a organization, regulatory compliance for them, somebody else that probably just wants to make money. So there'll be things, the rules and regulations of the country that they would probably cut corners, not pay the right duty, not pay the right tax. So if you put your P&L alongside with organizations that are, avoiding all those regulatory taxes and stuff like that, you wonder what you're still doing in business. So I think it's very difficult. So organizations that are compliant, there are 3 buckets that I would say that it's very critical for us to ensure that we keep staying afloat and keep winning in a country like Nigeria with a lot of regulatory. The tax guy would come and just come up with some tax audit value, and then you have to pull a lot of resources into trying to make sense out of the fine that they're asking you, even though you're very tax compliant. So you have all those distractions. But I feel we have to stay the course and stay focused, and then ensure that you continue with your operational excellence. I think the keynote speaker spoke around, excellence and stuff like that. So well-known organizations, the expectations from regulators and your consumers as well is that that operational excellence. And I think customer intimacy is very, very critical for us as well, to really understand what your consumers or customers are willing to pay for and actually want. Sometimes we think they want X, and actually it's Y they want. So really spending time with customers and consumers to really understand the value adding, what they're willing to pay for, especially with the inflationary situation that we have in Nigeria, where people are, would just probably go to competitors if they're not willing to pay for the pricing that where your products are. So it's very critical on, to stay very, very intimate with your consumers. And then lastly is all the governance defects and challenges that you have. I think it's for you to really look back and start seeing them, because you don't have 100% control over them. So it's to start seeing them as opportunities rather than barriers, you understand? So how do you navigate? How do you ensure that you stay close to regulators and you're advocating with them and helping them shape policies that will eventually benefit you as well? Yeah.
That you have said, the 3 of you, just listening to you, one thing that is very important, just surviving the Nigerian environment is innovation. And Pio also talked about that when he was giving his keynote presentation. In addition to excellence, which Adesola mentioned, Ugo also mentioned innovation. So you're not only competing with businesses that are in the same business with you, there are businesses that also want to do other things. So you're looking at a bigger scope of competitors, right? So just staying relevant, doing the most you can, excellence, consistency, and innovating to also adapt. And I also like the point you made about advocating with the regulators. It is not enough to acknowledge that things are not going right in our business environment, but what are we doing as business leaders to enable or to help improve the existing policies? I mean, things like this event, right? I believe that we may not have regulators here, but nonetheless, we have people who might be listening and who are close to regulators that can take back the message that we're giving out today. So very, very good observation. And Adesola, you're currently in the FMCG industry, correct? That's your sector.
Yes, I've always been.
Always been, exactly.
Yes, always been.
You've always been. And there's a global shift in the consumption patterns that has recorded an increase from the emerging markets. And do you see this being in the advantage local businesses operating in Nigeria? Any business anyway, operating in Nigeria currently, maybe in the long run, or yes?
Ideally, it should be. When you look at textbook logic, it should be. However, what we have to understand with the Nigerian market now, I think we lack a lot of infrastructure to help accelerate that advantage that this kind of shift would expect. So, but in the sector where locally made products, I think it's a huge advantage for that sector. Organizations like us that are probably not yet locally made, you understand, where we don't have products that are locally made or locally manufactured, but not the inputs of those products are not locally sourced. I think we will still struggle and not see that advantage. So it's very, very critical for us to start seeing how we can embark on backwards integration and localization of a lot of our inputs so that we can take advantage of this opportunity. Yeah.
Okay, so backward integration. I don't know, Ugo, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, yes. So maybe in a different way. So what I've also sort of seen, that's from my research of some of the financial statements of companies that have published their result, is a lot of local companies now have basically seized on some of the advantages they have now because of the urgent need to diversify more into local inputs rather than foreign inputs. And this thing also has sort of phases. So the initial phase first would be those that already have infrastructure in place and have the markets in place would operate as some sort of like an oligopoly. So they would increase their prices, and then they would also see volume increase. So those sort of products at the moment would be inelastic. So people will want to buy them regardless of what the price is. So for people that are in this space, that have the right infrastructure, that have the right value chain setup, just as Pio had mentioned earlier, we've seen them grow their top line astronomically, and it's incredible. So whether it's the likes of Okumu Oil or Presco or even Nigeria breweries, for example, or Guinness. So you've seen these guys sort of seeing their numbers grow. Now, another set of people that we've also seen adapt are those that have quickly also, changed their, some critical aspects of their value chain that is heavily reliant on foreign inputs. So you've seen those guys. So whether it's the guys who typically import raw materials to create something, but now have been able to get some sort of local players to do that for them, even if it means them investing in that, player. You've seen them also, grow their bottom line. So there are opportunities, but for now, I think it's mostly for those who already have some sort of infrastructure set up. With time, you see a lot more people come in because once they see that, there's a lot of advantages that will come. But for now, it's super for those who have something set up already.
Okay, so we all know that there are a lot of businesses that rely on FX, foreign currency, especially businesses that rely heavily on importation, right? Adesola, you're smiling already because that's your sector. So with the increasing foreign exchange volatility in Nigeria, right? What mitigating business strategies can prospective entrants adopt to hedge this potential risk? I'm going to direct this question to Pio because I know currently the space that Landmark is operating in is huge. It's not just hospitality, it's real estate, it's just a bucket of different things. So I'd like Pio to answer that question, and then we can take the views of Ugo and Adesola.
Thank you, Linda. Let me first of all perhaps start from giving the question some context, just with my experience. So there are three buckets of people that have that potentially have this foreign exchange challenge. There's the bucket of people who rely on imports to create their local markets, or to create their goods or their services for the local market. Those people are heavily challenged, right? There's a bucket of people who rely on imports and create that product for a foreign and a local market. They're as challenged, but not as challenged. There's a slight hedge in there, but they will look at it differently. And there's a third bucket of people who talk about foreign exchange, but it doesn't actually affect them because everything they have is local and everybody they're selling to is local, right? But we live in a country where everybody talks about foreign exchange. And if you don't take time in your business, you become a foreign exchange trader, dealer, speaker about it, and it actually doesn't actually affect you as much, right? So I would say the first strategy would be, and just lean on something Ugo said, is try to import substitution. Try to do a lot of the things, the goods and the raw materials that you need, try to make them local if you're selling to a local market. So that's one obvious way of hedging. A second obvious way of hedging is if you have goods and services that are sellable outside your boundaries, then do that as well. See whether you can explore a market outside your boundaries to attract foreign exchange. And if you can't, then you have to figure out how you reduce that impact. So at Landmark, as you said, we cut across 7 industries. Half of those industries are literally targeted at the Nigerian market, and they're targeted at Naira payers. But obviously, in the building content, 80% of what we build is imported. All right, so we always have that challenge, and so you don't just have the challenge of foreign exchange. What you really have the challenge of is the long ball game, right? In that you're buying long and you're selling short. And the problem with buying long and selling short is that you may not get the timing right, and then you can lose your shares on that, which is why real estate is a dangerous piece of business. But if it works for you, it works well. So one of the things we did is try to deal with many different markets. So we have the food and beverage market there, we have the leisure, the hospitality, the office market, and even education and health. And somewhere along the line, we have an inbuilt hedge. Not to say that it's perfect. And if I knew the best hedge for foreign exchange, then I'll be an extremely wealthy guy today. But I think the last thing I like to say is, it's basically it's a quote, right? And I'm leaning on the first thing I said, which is many of us talk a lot about foreign exchange, even though it doesn't concern us. And then if you talk about a problem long enough, it becomes a problem, right? So just remember, you can't really change the cards that you're dealt, but you can change the way you play that hand. So whatever situation you're in it, right? You've got to figure out how you come out of that sort of situation. I suppose I'll leave you with that quote.
Yeah. So someone from the audience is also echoing what you've just said about, reducing your reliance on importation. So, getting local products, sourcing for products locally. So the person is also saying local products is the best way to go. Maybe not all the time, but that's one way to look at it. Adesola, can we take your view on this, please?
Okay, so I agree with Paul on the dependence on FX. However, when you hear Nigerians saying that they've localized, we also have to dig into we've localized, because it depends on the industry you are. So when you deal with things like when I was in Unilever, or at least 70% of our inputs were petrochemical. Nigeria doesn't have the infrastructure for petrochemical. So no matter how you want to localize, there is no local alternative. We've been waiting for the Dangote refinery for so long, because that has been an area where we felt, okay, maybe we will be able to reduce dependencies. On packaging and packaging materials, majority of the multinationals will tell you that they've localized that. However, the suppliers of the packaging still have some heavy reliance on FX and bringing in the petrochemicals as well that they will require for the production of the packaging. So we've looked at all this. So one way or the other, everybody has a right to say that the FX situation impacts them, because even our local farmers require fertilizers, and we don't self-generate enough fertilizers in Nigeria. So at some point in time, they would have to import fertilizers, and it would have an FX impact. So I think as much as we don't want to think we're all impacted, I think we are all impacted, and it's something that we really all need to at least solve for. I think a lot of the organizations have now started budgeting at a blended rate or a ridiculous rate, which would be the supposedly black market rate, just so that you can price within that range. And then that helps reduce the distraction on sourcing of FX and trying to wait for the long queue from the central bank. But I feel that it's a big issue for most manufacturers, one way, either directly or indirectly, and it is a huge distractions. And the strategy for me is really to ensure that, okay, if even you're going to localize, can we make Nigeria as a hub, a manufacturing hub, that allows us generate and export to other sister companies or markets, that can either with our finished goods or even commodities that exist in Nigeria that can also be used by other countries within your group, your multinational group, to self-generate FX, and then you have export proceeds that you can then use to bring in your other raw materials that you require FX for. But the issue with that, we've tried to do that as well, is the quality of the products and that we get from our own Nigerian market. And the requirement for that is for a lot of organizations to now backwards integrate and support. And it's taking you out of your core, but it's something that on a medium, long term, we would have to do, to backwards integrate and support either the farmers by getting them the right seeds, and then the right fertilizers, and then monitoring them so that the output from those farmers or suppliers would meet the quality standards that the organization would like to use as input. So I think they're different strategies, but they're not quick wins, and they're not short term. So they're like medium, long term strategies.
Sorry, Linda, I'm not sure I can hear you.
Hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Before we take your view on the question, Ugo, I wanted to ask Adesola a follow-up question. You know, when you were talking about Nigeria hub, what then do you think would make other nations, you know, refer to Nigeria as against making their own nations or making their own country the hub for manufacturing? So what would make Nigeria stand out that other nations would then refer to us as, you know, the place for manufacturing, the hub for manufacturing, as you say?
So I think it has to be a strategic decision by the organizations. And that's where I said within the group of a global group. So this is not even a nation's place for the organization to say, for us to be able to generate FX for Nigeria, let's, you know, Nigeria as a manufacturing hub, we have a lot of opportunity. And I think the opportunities in Nigeria is there. So when you look at a lot of investors, they're interested in Nigeria, no matter how unstable Nigeria is, it's still a country of interest. We have the population, we have the tech, you know, we have the technology, we have the resources. I think the cost of production is what makes it very unattractive for organizations to want to manufacture out of Nigeria. And I think when you look at the cost benefit analysis on the cost of producing in Nigeria and the amount of FX Nigeria can generate from exporting, I think it will make strategic sense for some organization to make that strategic decision to use Nigeria as an export hub.
Interesting. Thank you, Adesola. Ugo, let's take your view on this question.
All right, so I guess Forex will always be an issue for us in Nigeria. And that's why we often refer to it as FX conundrum. So, and what most businesses and what I often say is, you have to determine, there are some things that you have control over, and there's some things that you absolutely do not have any control over. And one thing you don't have control over is the FX policy of a country. So today, the central bank or the government, does not want people to have access to FX for products or for things that they feel we can manufacture locally. They don't want that at all. And that has been the policy for the last 6-7 years. So we are in a demand side FX policy where all they're trying to do is curb demand. So that you can't control. Now, what you can, however, control is how much FX you need, when you need them, or whether you want to disconnect your business from a heavy reliance on FX. And that's the part of the control that you have and what you have to fix. On the regulatory side, the CBN has also come up with, if you insist that you want to continue with FX, you want to continue with the businesses that rely on imports or businesses that rely on imports as an input, then there are regulatory policies that are out there, whether it's the FX 200 or whether it's the 65 Naira rebate that the CBN has put forward. There are several things that you can do, but we all know that those policies, as good as they might sound, are very difficult to implement when it comes to government. So what is very key is how you're weaning yourself out of heavy reliance on FX. I've always said, look, it's got to be diversify, earn, and invest when it comes to FX. So if you can't diversify your business away from heavy reliance on FX, then you got to find a way to end that FX yourself. And that's what the government is basically saying. Because even if they do float the exchange rate anyway, you got to still be able to earn your own FX so that you can hedge whatever FX risk that you have. And then you got to also find ways to invest in things that can give you FX. There's no government that can solve that problem. All the government can basically do for us is create an environment, an enabling environment for all of us to solve this sort of problem. It's not going to change. A few years, 2013-14, Nigeria used to do $80 billion or so on total oil exports. Today, we're doing less than 40 billion, struggling at just over $40 billion. Nigeria probably needs over $110, $120 billion annually to have a stable exchange rate. We're nowhere close to that. And it's unlikely that we're going to be close to that anytime soon. So what it then means is that if you think this FX problem is going to be solved this year, no. If you think it's going to be solved next year, no. So if you want to be competitive in your business and you want to continue to grow, then you got to find a way to wean yourself out of this FX quagmire. So, and it's either through the backward integration that Adesola had mentioned, or you have ways of earning your own FX, or you completely or reduce how much reliance you have on FX, or perhaps you hedge. That's just the only solution. There's no hard and fast rule here for this FX conundrum, and it's going to remain with us, like I said, until our FX revenue starts to grow. And this process, trust me, it's not going to be a 2-year process, not a 5-year process. Probably going to be a protracted process for us to deal with.
I like the point you just made about if you're going to rely heavily on FX, you have to diversify, invest, or earn. So if saying this is the way you want to run your business, you have to come up with strategies to then manage the policies you have limited control over. So I have another question before we begin to take the questions from the audience. So going forward, right, what impact we can't stop talking about the global pandemic, right? Even though it's seeming like we're moving away from it. So we're in the post-pandemic era. But so going forward, what impact would the post-pandemic era have on shaping the manner in which businesses in Nigeria view and optimize their assets, taking into cognizance the very new normal? So when we're talking about the new normal, we're talking about remote work, flexi work. Now talent, you can have talent initially. When you have talent working for multiple organizations, people will term it conflict of interest. But now we have organizations even encouraging their talents to say, we want people who are even entrepreneurs. We want to know what you're doing. What are you doing? Let's see how we can support you. So there's all of that going on and taking place. So what impact would this era have on shaping the manner in which businesses optimize its assets, including human resources? So I'd like to take everyone's view on this, so you can go in any order.
Okay, so I don't know if Pio wanted to go first.
No,
Okay.
no, please,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so all right, so very good point that you mentioned, Linda, because as you were just saying, I was just thinking, COVID-19 has basically changed the world order, whether I would like it or not. And like I mentioned, it unfortunately falls into the bucket of what we can control. Today, look at us. We're here. We have over 150 people. At some point, over 107 people here logged in. We're talking. They can hear us. We're communicating. We probably would have been in some hall somewhere doing this. And who knows, maybe we probably even have as much people here logged in. And this is recorded. You can play it at any point in time, wherever. So it's content that's going to remain. So the world has basically changed. Nothing we can do. So as a business, you got to look at this in a number of ways. So one, how does this affect your inventory, right? So the sort of inventory that you have today and how you store that inventory, has it changed? So if you're somebody who sells tires, so what impact has COVID-19 got on where you store your tires, or the new world order has got on where you store your tires? Can you still store it in the same way that you used to store it? Because how much tires you need now depends on how many people are going to be on the road anyway. So you have to think in that direction. Then you also think in terms of location. So if you're opening branches now, do you want to, is it still viable now that you have branches located everywhere where, for a lot of businesses, your branch is just your mobile phone, right? So how does that impact on your CapEx spend? So do you want to redirect your CapEx spend elsewhere rather than start to redirect your CapEx spend on trying to have more physical, footprints? Then of course, your factors of production, whether it's your equipment, whether it's the things that you used to do your business. COVID-19 has also changed that too. And then we also mentioned Forex issues. So do you want to rely on imports from China, or is it Europe, or should you be looking at somewhere else? You've already seen what geopolitical issues like the Russia-Ukraine war can cause in your business, even though you're here or you're not the one fighting, it's not your country fighting, but it's basically affected what you're doing here. So that has also shaped how we think these days. And then even imported inflation is a problem. So whether it's US dealing with inflation rate and what you import, they are affecting your own business. So that has also got to shape how you think and how you approach your business. And last but not least, of course, is human capital, which it's perhaps the most important asset that you have. So it's changed. So I think in the US, they call it the great resignation or something, where you're seeing people now, employees now have so much powers because their eyes have basically been opened. It's just like Adam and Eve in the Bible. And they're like, wow, you mean I could actually be this much productive working from home? Wow. So now, if you're trying to hire talent, they're asking you straight up, do you allow work from home? Are you flexible? Because you know what, I've got 2 jobs and it's normal. I've realized something that I can do 2 jobs. I don't have to stick with you from 8 till 5. So you really want my talent, then you got to be able to accommodate some of these things. So that has also changed. So employees also need to also change their entire recruitment policy. So in fact, I was reading up somewhere in one of those reports where they mentioned that recruitment these days is probably going to be decentralized. So you're not going to have recruitment where it's just one HR department that just handles it. Because now recruitment is going to be decentralized, where in your own unit or your own department, you handle your own recruitment. And then once you're done with your recruitment, then you just hand them over to HR to do all their own board and stuff, because things are basically changed. So you have to be nimble now. And there's a jostle for talent everywhere. It's facing everyone. So I think it's changed a lot of those things, and it's still evolving. And I don't have the right answers, but I think those sort of buckets that are sort of put it in is how we've got to approach these things, right? As business owners or even as employees, listening here, that's what you've got to do to be able to at least survive this era that we find ourselves in.
Awesome. It just seems like the future of work is now. People don't say the future of work anymore. Now the future of now. And as we can see, emergencies are catalysts for change. So what we used to think of doing in the future, we have organizations already adopting the new ways of working. So I'll take Pio's point of view last because I have a follow-up question for him, particularly related to landmarks operations. So Adesola, you can go next.
Yeah, I think pretty much the same as Ugo. Ugo has said that the working ethics has changed post-COVID, especially for the finance function, where we felt quite a lot of things needed to be physical, signing documents. I remember when we were told to start working from home in March of 2020, and it was the end of a quarter for us in Unilever then. And I just thought, what a time to go home. How do we close the quarter, have AGMs, board meetings and everything? And, it really changed my thinking of finance. I'm a traditional finance person. I think the excitement with the younger resources in my team was far more than the challenges. I thought, how do we close the month? But online, we were able to close the month even faster than we did when we were physically in the office. We were able to do stock take, quarterly stock take virtually. We were able to close KPMG audits virtually. And, even cash collections for our key distributors, I think it's evolved. When I look at what has happened in the last 24 months to now, I think I would never have thought in about 2 years ago that we would be where we are. So I think technology, and embracing technology, agility, it's forced all of us to be more agile and, more, quick to executing as well, and embracing technology for all execution of our strategy. So I think it's exciting times. We're not there yet. When I think of, when I look at the Tesla self-drive cars and stuff like that. So all these things you watch in the science fiction movies when we were much younger, we're living in those times now. And I think it's just really for organizations to quickly embrace and ensure that they have the right resources that would embrace these changes and move quickly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adesola. So Pio, let's please take your view on this.
All right, I think Adesola and Ugo have said a lot and said most of it. But I think, I think the pandemic, yes, has brought the most significant health and economic challenges of our generation. And one thing we've learned from this, I know we're focusing on this sort of new norm. One thing we've learned from this is the many changes one has to make in terms of predicting the future. And as I say, nobody can predict the future. So if you want to predict the future, you've got to help create it. And I think I said that earlier. So I'm going to pick on 4 things I think sort of matter. One is the boundaries between work and leisure are blurring. It's obvious, right? And Ugo touched on a lot of that and how people want to work. Now, there are many reasons for this. People are going to focus more on health. They're going to focus more on flexibility. They're going to focus more on their lifestyle. So any platforms that support this is bound to do well going forward. So that's one, focusing on the health, flexibility, lifestyle. 2, digital transformation, and Adesola spoke a lot about that. The time has come where technology is at the helm of everything, yes? If your business does not leverage on digital technology, it will become obsolete soon. And a colleague of mine who sells mangoes, said, but how can I leverage on digital technology? All I do is sell mangoes, and we have this joke saying, I've seen mango tire, right? But and I think, as I said earlier, there's an entire distribution chain, there's an entire supply chain, and somewhere along the line, whether it's reaching out to the market, whether it's the packaging, whether it's even just talking about it, there's a digital presence there. The third and the fourth are the ones that are not so obvious, but I think are equally important, and they leverage on the first and the second. The third point is managing talent. I think someone once said, and again, another colleague of mine says this all the time, and I've learned from him on it, that the most successful organizations in this generation post-pandemic will deal with 2 things. They'll learn how to manage people, and they'll learn how to manage resources, right? So how you manage your talent, how you manage people that are coming through your front door, and those that leave through the back, how you make ordinary people do extraordinary things, how you create a set of people who are willing to go above and beyond what is normally or are prepared to effectively defy conventional wisdom and just push the boundaries, go above and beyond what people are normally prepared to do, will very much influence how successful you'll be as the environment changes very quickly. And then the last thing, as I said, is managing resources. Someone once said to me, if you buy things that you don't need to impress people you don't know, you soon sell everything you need, right? And you have to basically live with that. So how you manage your resources, whether from a personal point of view or from a business point of view, and before you jump to say, solve it with money, think of if you can solve it with technology or with something else. So I think those are the sorts of things. There was a time when we ran a service office business in 17 African countries, and we had a strap line. And the strap line was this, and this was long before people were sort of working from home. And we basically said it goes like if you can't do tomorrow's work in yesterday's office. I'm not talking about the physical office, but effectively what it's basically saying is you can't do the things that are important for tomorrow if you're still entrenched in your work habits of yesterday. So I think change is a constant, and everybody has to change.
Yeah, like very good points you made. In fact, very good points you've all made. But I have a follow-up question for you, Pio. When you were talking about business survival based on two things, the businesses who would survive post-pandemic would have to focus on two things, right? Managing resources, how you manage your resources, and how you manage your people. So for someone like you who you're a decision leader in your organization, you're a decision maker in Landmark, and it's a large team, I know, because Landmark is also a client. So is there a necessary trade-off between facilitating growth and resource sustainability for you in your organization?
So Lisa, that's an extremely difficult question you've asked me. How long do you have? So I suppose the obvious answer is yes, there is. And how we manage these complexities of business determines how successful we are. I think there will always be trade-offs because of limited resources, whether it's human resources or whether it's financial resources. You're always going to be limited in a way, and how you manage that to propel yourself to growth will always determine how successful you are. And we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've sometimes done quite well at it, and sometimes we've done quite poorly at it. I will take you to task on the first thing you said in terms of decision maker. I think so. There are 4,000 people that work within the Landmark ecosystem, and I would comfortably say probably 3,000 of them don't even know who I am, right? They will argue with you whether I am the decision maker. But I think what we try to do at Landmark, and just because there's so many people that we have to influence their lives every day, is we try to I don't know what the correct word is, but we try to make sure that the principles of the culture of Landmark and decisions that everybody makes, right? They're made in the view that our job is to make sure that people come to Landmark, have a great time, consider it value for money, have a great experience, and go away and irresistibly tell others about it. Now, we don't always succeed. I'm sure just having said that on this platform, I'll get a few text messages say, well, I'm still unhappy, right? but it is what it is. But you are right. Managing those complexities, and it happens every day. I said to someone the other day, we're going through a refinancing. We're financing a particular project, and we're talking about financing in excess of $30 million. And I was dealing with the negotiations of this. At the same time, I was dealing with someone who wanted 700 Naira refund. And believe me, it took more of my time on the 700 Naira refunds than the $30 million. And the reality is, and people are like, well, why don't you just forget that? And I said, no, because if you don't deal with the small things, they will soon become big. So you have to pay the same attention to that 700 Naira guy as you would to the $30 million guy. And believe me, that's the conundrum in business. If you think only the big things are important, you'll eventually fail. So I don't know whether I've answered your question in a roundabout way, but I've just tried to give some context to it.
You've answered the question. Wow. So if you don't deal with the small things will become big things. I took that, and I'm going to hold that very close to my heart. So thank you so much. We have a lot of questions, from the audience that would be taken. Can we have the questions from the audience? Can we have the questions? We have the questions. Can we have the Zoom flash so we can get the question? Just okay. And the question is, to what extent should aggregation be a context or filter versus just only scalability when looking at growth opportunities? I repeat, to what extent should aggregation be a context or filter versus just scalability when looking at growth opportunities?
Ugo is very well versed to answer that. I see Ugo is a student of the value chain and the competitive advantage. You know, I did that as my MBA program. And when I heard you talk, I wish I knew you when I was doing my MBA dissertation. It would have helped me to do a much better job.
All right. So was it your? Could you repeat that question again? Let me get the context of what he's asking.
To what extent should aggregation be a context or filter versus just scalability when looking at growth opportunities? I think what the person is trying to ask is, let me just rephrase because the question is a bit confusing. Let me rephrase. To what extent should aggregation be a context versus just scalability when looking at growth opportunities? So aggregation versus scalability when you're looking at growth opportunities.
I don't think that, because he made it sound like it's a zero-sum game. I don't think that's what it is. I think that they kind of complement each other. So you can't, I don't see how you want to aggregate, perhaps maybe aggregate different sort of businesses without thinking of scale, right? Because scale is your ambition. Scale is why you do what you're doing. Scale is you growing beyond a particular, space. Scale is you continuing to innovate and acquire. So they sort of complement each other, and I don't really see any trade-off here. Perhaps even if there's any, it could be not scaling too fast, because that's something that a lot of businesses also face sometimes, where because you're trying to sort of acquire a lot of things, and then you're scaling, you're bringing in so much capital, and you're scaling, and then you sort of miss time, the sort of tools or resources that you have to manage that sort of investment. So that's where I would only think that perhaps there's a challenge, but it's not a zero-sum game.
Okay. Okay, so we have another question. Thank you, Ugo, for that. We have another question, and that is, where can startup with MVP get investors and partners?
Well, I suppose there are many traditional sources. Everybody says family, friends, and angels. I heard what someone say is FFFA, 3 F's and an A. So family, friends, fools, and angels. But on a serious note, I suppose the best place to start, yes, is with people who know you. And because when people are investing, they're investing in 3 things. They're investing in you yourself, right? And you're just the ability to deal with what it is you're trying to create. 2, the idea that you have, and 3, the prospects. But you can't take away the person from the business. So the best place to start is family and friends.
So FFA, family, friends, and angels. Someone just dropped on the chat box, said, and Lions Den.
There are many platforms, yes, and Lions Den is a great platform.
Okay, great. So there's another question here, and okay, I think this is a personalized question. I want to start a franchise with similarities close to the McDonald's model, land and product, but how do I convince landowners to delay for 2 years before they start seeking profit? I repeat, I want to start a franchise where with similarities close to the McDonald's model, land and product. How do I convince landowners to delay for 2 years before they start seeking profit?
Who's the question for?
Anyone. I'll direct anyone. Anyone can take this.
This sounds like an FMCG question.
It does.
Not at all.
And a real estate question as well.
Okay, so let me take the real estate part of it. I'll take the real estate part of it. So I mean, it's an interesting question, and maybe it has two answers. So the first answer, I like to say at Landmark, we have 78 different businesses at Landmark, other people's businesses that run within our platform, and the majority of them don't pay rent. The majority of them pay taxes. So we consider our business as almost like a local authority or a country. We provide all the infrastructure and the experiences and stuff. And then the people come in there and run their businesses. We enable that environment, and then they pay us a percentage of their sales, which effectively is tax, right? So you can go into an environment like that, right? And you basically eat what you kill, right? So if you make money, your landlord makes money. And if you don't make money, your landlord doesn't make money. So he does everything to make sure you make money, right? But if other people around you are making money and you don't make money, he's going to eject you and bring someone else in who does make money. So that's one option. And the second is, if you really want the landlord to wait, because remember, landlords have their own costs, right? They bought the land for money and that money is counting somewhere. If you really want them to wait, then you need to look for a patient landlord. So you need to look for someone who has no alternative use to that land, or no immediate alternative use. And that's what I was saying. So if someone walked up to me and says, can I use something that you've got that you're not using? I'll say, of course you can, right? If you say, can you use something that many other people want to use and pay for, and you want it for free? I'll be less inclined to listen to you unless you're a family, a friend, or an angel.
Very good response to that. Adesola, do you want to add anything to that?
Nothing really to add into that. Yeah, I'm not very conversant with the franchise. I'm sure people will want to make money, so in going into a franchise. So I really don't know how you can convince anybody not to make money for a couple of years, or else they will divest that same investment into something where they can start getting returns ASAP. Yeah. So It has to be somebody that is passionate and ready to do it as charity work for a couple of years. Yeah.
If I can come in,
business to make money and expecting someone to make money from you, because you're a provider, but you're a customer to another business. So how do you expect to make money and someone doesn't? So it's a tough one. Ugo, you want to say something to that?
Yes. So I was going to say that it might be theoretical, but it has worked for some people. And it's the same model that most developers use today. So if you're able to get landlords in rural areas that will take equity in what you're doing, which means their land becomes equity in your business. If you're willing to share that much, then perhaps that can work.
Ugo, I think we've lost you. On with the next.
Okay.
Ugo, so we lost you for some seconds. Could you take your response again?
All right. So what I said, can you hear me better now? All right, great. So what I said is that so you could also use the same model that developers use, where you have those landlords contribute their land as equity. Now, but the challenge you face is you want to have a franchise across different regions. So is every region its own business, where then that landlord's equity becomes equity for that business and all of that? So that's the challenge that you would have to face. But if you're able to have, they're very smart lawyers and financial analysts that can sort of put some structure for you, where the land then becomes some form of equity into that business. And then, but I doubt that. I hope you guys can hear me. I doubt that there is any landlord out there that will tell you they're going to give you land and then you pay them in 2 years. Even churches won't even allow that. So I doubt that they're going to get anything like that. So you've got to be able to give something as well. But in terms of strategy execution, I'm not sure that's such a very good strategy, though. I really don't think so. I think if you're going to go into a franchise business, it's a seriously capital-intensive business, and you've got to be able to fund those sort of expansion. One way as well, sorry if I'm not taking too much time, could be to start with one. Since it's a franchise, start with one, do it very, very, very well, and then now have people go ahead and open those franchises. Yeah, and then maybe that then you just have a cut on their profit. I guess that's really what you can do. Looks like Linda, did you hear part of what I said?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks like they went off.
Yeah, I think there's some challenges at control station.
We just got a confirmation from some of the audience that they could hear you loud and clear. So we'll move on to the next question, and that is, what are the bottlenecks for Made in Nigeria movement? I think Made in Nigeria products. I think that's what this person is trying to write here. So what are the bottlenecks for Made in Nigeria products or Made in Nigeria movement? That's the question.
There are plenty now.
Exactly.
There are plenty. Is it logistics? Being able to move your products from one part of the country to another, which is all part of your scaling? Is it regulatory bottlenecks, getting licenses, either it's license to produce or license to even locate your business somewhere, all the multiple taxes that are involved? Is it that? Is it also maybe getting capital to scale your business through through banks, and not just capital that can deliver the sort of returns that would allow your business to be sustainable? That's also a challenge. And of course, there's also insecurity. So if you want problems, we can list plenty of problems for you, but I don't think that's what we want to be doing, listing problems.
So no, very well said. I would say, the biggest challenge with Made in Nigeria products is perception. If a Made in Nigeria product is an import substitution, so its competition is imported, the biggest change is perception, is how people perceive it. Is it inferior because it's made in Nigeria, or is it inferior because it's actually inferior, or is it superior? Right. So one has to focus on the things that you can control, which is the perception of your business. I always say to people, brand is not a color or fancy words. Brand is how people think about you and how they perceive your business. You've got to figure out a way to create a brand for your product, right, that makes it compete side by side or above and beyond the imported product that is substituting. And that's so, whatever you do, just do it undeniably well. Right. So when people see it, and some markets have gotten that. So, in the construction business, like cabling, the Made in Nigeria cables, when people building buildings go to the market, they're looking for the homemade cables. They're not looking for foreign cables, because the homemade cables are more resilient, So, one has to think from that end of the value chain.
Interesting view.
Pricing as well. Pricing is also quite important. Pricing is very, very important. I mean, if you look at the Cola Wars, for example, how local manufacturers who compete with foreign products price their product, the price point that product is placed is also very, in fact, it's a huge part of the entire go-to-market strategy that they adopt, because if you're trying to compete with the product that's even superior to yours, just getting the price right can shift things for you majorly. So that's also something you got to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pricing is also a factor.
Yes.
Pio,
yes.
you wanted to say something to that?
Yeah, no, I basically want to say, add to that and say I couldn't agree more. Having said that, quality is as important, if not more important, because quality is remembered long after price is forgotten. So when you have a product, you forget how much it cost you when you're many years into using it.
Quality is remembered long after price is forgotten. I've taken that. Absolutely. That would go to my wall somewhere. It will go to my wall somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yes. So we have a question directed at you, Pio, and that is, what are the common mistakes most businesses make in Nigeria? That's directed at you, Pio.
Wow, well, common mistakes. Wow. So I think that, well, I suppose one is at the beginning. Let me look at the business just from the life cycle of a business. I think many people go into businesses because they think it makes money, not because they're trying to solve a problem. So that's, I think, the biggest mistake is just the starting of a business that you think it makes money. Because the reality in Nigeria is you can have two factories side by side producing pure water. One of them is successful and the other is a failure. So you know it's not about the idea of making money, right? So that I think is the first thing. The second thing is knowledge, experience. A lot of people go into businesses, they have no experience and very little knowledge, and they hire people and expect people to bring all that knowledge and experience, but they don't even have the passion to drive and to control that business. So I would always say that, you know, go into a business where you have some experience and some knowledge, do your time, do your apprenticeship, make sure you do your time, learn from other people and learn from other people's mistakes as well. And I suppose the third thing is funding, and it's sad in a country like Nigeria, it's quite tough. Many people, that's the most asked question, is how do I get money for my business? I get. But many people go into businesses under finance and just hope for a Hail Mary, right? The reality is, you know, once you get in, right, you know, I always say to people, a half-finished building is no good to anybody, right? So if you spend money on something, you've got to make sure you try to finish it. So most people go into things and hope that someone will rescue them when they run out of money. And you know, it simply doesn't work like that. It was I think it was 101 in business school. The first lecture that taught me basically says what kills businesses most, and different people are coming up strategy, people. They said no, just pure cash flow. You run out of cash, you're dead, right? And so just make sure you have enough money to keep the lights on.
Indeed, if you run out of cash, game over, you know, except you have, I'm telling you, it's just, it becomes really tough at that point. Yes. So I have a question directed at Adesola. So what businesses would you advise we go into following the current trends?
I think I would advise people to go into businesses that they have a passion for. Like we've rightly said, it's not going to be easy. Probably the first 12 to 24 months will be very difficult. So if you don't have a passion for that business, then it won't survive. So I think it has to be a passion, and like Pio said, has to be something that is solving a problem. You understand? So when you're, you know, when you're finding it very difficult, you still have kind of an end game of a solution that you're trying to land. And I think that would motivate you. But you find a lot of people, when you ask them why they're going into certain businesses, because they have this perception that somebody else has been and is making money, so there's money to be made in the business, without really understanding the challenges, the hurdles that people have to face. So I think that passion and drive has to be the fundamental basis for going into any business.
Yeah, it's a good thing you just added drive. I wanted to ask you, is passion enough? Because there are a lot of people that are passionate about doing something, but they don't have, like Pio mentioned, the skill. There's a knowledge gap, right? So passion is not enough, right? But I like the fact that you've added drive as well. So that's very, very critical. So I have a question here. It's a long read. I'm going to direct this to Ugo. So this person says, what is your take in having to play balls? I don't understand what this person means. But the question is, I know someone facing some difficulty getting an approval from the CBN. What's your take on that? That question is for you, Ugo, because that's your space.
I don't think it's just the CBN. I think trying to get an approval for anything of significant value is very difficult. Even if you meet all the requirements, and this is because you're dealing with human beings, and there are processes that, and even idiosyncrasies across the whatever regulatory body it is that you're dealing with. And but what people that have been successful at some of these things, will tell you is they were able to, one, have very good relationship management. And you know, the interesting thing about relationship management is when they ask you, it's not relationship management with the organ at the top. It actually starts from the gate man and all the way to the guy who carries the file and the guy in the back office who you think is just there sitting and not doing anything. So being able to, you know, have very solid relationship management with these guys, know their names. When you go there, sit down and gist with them like a regular guy. Don't appear to be very simple. You know their children, know their birthdays, things like that, because those things sort of would break the ice a lot for you. And people who have also been very successful have been successful because they have a very solid way of getting information. When it comes to government, if you don't have information, you're dead. You can't get anything approved for you. So you need to have very solid, information network in there. So you know where your file is, you know what stage your approval is, you know how others have actually done it as well, so that you can learn that rope, and then you can apply that. And then, of course, there's also the nepotic side of things, whether I would like it or not. I don't think it's a Nigerian problem as well as everywhere. So you've got to know someone to get something done, right? So either you know someone's brother or so ask your network. So it could be your church, it could be your circle of friends. Do you know anybody in this agency or in here that can help? These are the kind of things that make it work, right? So I've not seen any agency in Nigeria where if you meet all the criteria and come from the moon, that you just go and apply for something, that these things don't matter: information, network, and and relationship management. If you don't have that, it's not going to happen for you. So I think that's what I would say, but keep at it. It's difficult. There's ease of doing business, trying to make things quite easy across agencies. There's some level of cooperation across agencies as well, but it's extremely, extremely difficult. It's not easy. So when you prepare for these things, and when you're trying to get licenses like this, you gotta prepare adequately for it. Know that it's going to take time. Now, one other advice before I go as well is, one thing that I've also noticed is that licenses for things that haven't really caught on are easily obtained. So, when you have new ideas, so for example, now SEC has come up with this crowdsourcing license and things like that. So a lot of people haven't really gone into that space a lot. It's easier to get those kind of licenses. But when you're trying to get today, 5, 6, in fact, 10 years ago, it was probably easy getting a fintech license. But today, if you want to get a fintech license, you sweat because it's saturated already. So government is wondering, why do I have to give you this license, right? Or you want to get a BDC license, and that's going to be extremely difficult because it's saturated. So you probably also need to look at areas that people haven't really, gone into, and then see if you can get licenses from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Ugo. Because we have limited time, right? We'll be coming to the end of the session. So very soon we'll take your concluding views, but we had people who raised their hands. Do we still have someone in the audience that wants to speak? So if you'd like to ask a question, if you'd like to unmute and turn on your video, we would allow you. Or we have 3 hands raised. Okay, let's see how many we can take. So can I have their names so that yeah, so please unmute your mic and turn on your video so we can spotlight you. Have you given them the right to no video? Okay, so they can unmute. Okay. Can we have them unmute? Have you given them the right to speak? Okay, okay, great. Temitope Adebanjo, you've been given the right to speak, so proceed with your question, please. Temitope Adebanjo, you've been given the right to speak. Okay, so who is the second person? Annie King. Okay, Annie King, you can speak, you can ask your question now. Otherwise, we'll move on to, okay,
Good
perfect.
afternoon, and thank you very, very much for the audio. This is my first time in this program, and I promise I will always log on. Thank you so much. My question is to PO. Please, what was your discussion with the Nokia director in the aircraft? You promised to share it with us. God bless you.
I was going to ask that. Thank you for reminding me. So over to you, PO.
Thank you, Annie. No, so it was a simple discussion about business. So when I found out he was once the chief executive of Nokia, I just wanted to know how they lost market share, and that was it. So it was a friendly discussion. I was conscious that I didn't want to take too much of his time, otherwise he'd start asking me about my time. But his view was basically they did nothing wrong, they just lost. And you know, and I suppose we all watched that story play out. At least those of us who are over 40 would have seen at least some of the history of Nokia and how they were at the forefront of technology at one time. But they at some point they stopped inventing. I think the same thing happened to Kodak. And I think even if you look through Nigeria, I assume, you know, when I was growing up, there was sort of the Young Shark Grow and Obi-Chukwu and some big transport organizations that died off. So some of it is invention, some of it is personnel, and some of it is just being behind the times. And the last question we had officially from Linda during the panel, you know, spoke towards that is what are the things you need to do in this new normal? And I urge everybody to think of the role of technology and the role of people and how you combine those two forces.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So before we move on to, we'll take one more, right? Joshua Iweze, you've been allowed to speak, so please proceed with your question. Yeah, Ami King says, thank you, PU, for that. Thank you very much. Yeah, so Joshua Iweze, we will take the question from you before we move on to the next session, which is the technology session.
All right, thank you for this opportunity. I'm in the energy sector, bringing hydrogen technology for renewable energy sector, but I've been bootstrapping. So my question is, how do I get people, angel investors around Nigeria to invest into this technology? And how do we look into becoming first in producing this made in Nigeria and distributing it all over Africa? Thank you.
So who wants to take that? Any?
Well, I can have a quick go. So I'll say, look, if you're in the technology sector and you're in the energy sector at the same time, then you're on a winner, because both are the sort of nows of the world, right? Now you may or may not know, but most of the energy giants have all sorts of programs where they seed fund a lot of this technology, right? I had the privilege of serving on the jury committee for Total Energies, and they have a seed fund, and they did a competition, and they had, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 people that applied for the competition. At the end of the day, they funded 15 of these businesses. So I think do your research, and you probably be able to tie into one of these funds. The second thing is accelerator programs. So it's more technology based. There are just so many accelerator programs that help groom you, put you and give you access to funds. But I would say those are my two. If all else fails, come to Lions Den.
Okay. Thank you. Great. So someone said, Pio is a man of many stories. Sir, can you put them together in a document so that, they can learn from your experience? So I just thought I should read that out to you. So we have a lot of questions, but we don't have the time to take all the questions. So we're going to move on. We're going to close out by having your concluding views. That's the views from Pio, Ugo, and Adesola before we move on to the technology session. So I think, Ugo, you can go first, and then Adesola, and then we can conclude with Pio.
All right, thanks so much, Linda. Very engaging session. I enjoyed myself, and amazing being on the same panel with Pio. But I would just like to close out with, I had mentioned the Great Resignation. we're also currently in great inflation, and this is going to be sticky for a while. So if you're a business owner, I think you want to be very, very mindful of rising costs. It's not going to go away anytime soon. So you got to, dedicate as much energy as you can, as much energy as you channel towards growing your top line, to also managing your cost, because a lot of businesses are going to be kicked out, would die because of the rising cost of goods and services. So I think how you approach that will also determine how well you're able to win when we come out of the other side. There is light at the tunnel, of course, but we have to go through this phase first. This is a phase that was created because of COVID, because of a lot of the stimulus packages that has happened across the world. So, the global economy is heated at the moment. So this is likely to be sticky. So I would like to close with that and encourage everyone to look inwards again, look at the entire cost structure, and then see how you can win yourself out so that doing business for you will be profitable. Thank you.
So cost as a major factor in surviving, and continuing to run your business, considering all that has happened. Thank you so much, Ugo. Adesola, if you're still online, Adesola?
Yes. Yeah. So I think in closing, I think a lot has been said, and from each of the speakers, the keynote speaker, even from the questions, the builds. So I think it's just really consolidating that together for the business owners or the people thinking of doing business in Nigeria. It's not an easy terrain to do business. So there'll be a lot of challenges, but I think with the passion and the drive, you'll be able to overcome those challenges. And I think the challenges in itself could also be business opportunities for people in this audience. So we've looked at the different sectors. We've seen where the challenges are. And I always feel the best businesses that thrive are those that are solving a problem. And I think I've spoken around the operational excellence, so ensuring that you're very good at where you now decide to narrow down in doing business, so that you're known for that specific business. And you develop a brand that consumers want to reckon with and patronize, and then the consumer intimacy as well. So that would also help your innovation drive, because you might go into one business, but things are so fluid and things are changing. Consumer needs are also changing. Critical that you ensure that you're always 3 steps ahead of your consumers and addressing their needs as you go. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much, Adesola. And we will now take the concluding view of PO.
Thank you very much. Well, literally, I'm leaning on almost everything that Adesola has said, because I've planted myself firmly there. I've always been an advocate of excellence, and there are no shortcuts to excellence. If you ask me what companies can do, my points will be 5 in number. One is, practice global standardization, just best in class. Be the best you can all the time, every time. Second, I'll say innovate. Don't stop to create. Don't stop to think. If you don't innovate, you will die. Third is leverage on emerging technologies. You need to understand the role of technology in business. It's the way the world is going. You're not going to change that. But it's so important to make sure that you understand it and understand the implications for your business. And the fourth thing I'll say, that data analytics. We don't do enough thinking. We don't learn from other people's mistakes here. Use data, gather data, understand what you're trying to do, and then actualize it. So I think those would be my points. And I would say, the biggest point, I think, of the night, and I just made it again, and I'll say it again just for impact, is that if you want to run a successful business, then do something that solves the problems of many people. I'm not a big fan of niche businesses, right? If you want to sell Rolls Royces, you're going to have to look for a few people that want to buy Rolls Royces. But, if you want to sell shoes, everybody wears them. And I'm not encouraging people to go and become shoemakers, though, but you get my point. So thank you very much, Linda. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot on this platform, and I hope you will have the grace to invite me again sometime. If you're talking, we can't hear you, but I'm hoping you said yes.
Network is frozen.
All right. Oh wow! I think headquarters has been blown out. And, I'm sure somewhere along the line. But yes, Ugo, you said so many interesting things. As I said, I did my MBA program, gosh, 26 years ago, at London Business School. And my project, my dissertation, I wrote it on creating and sustaining competitive advantage. And one of my guest lecturers was a guy called Michael Porter. And he's one of, in those days, was one of the people who knew what competitive advantage was all about. And so listening to you talk, I thought myself struggling with the project. I wish I knew you then, assuming you were born, right? It would have been...
I was much younger back then, so
yes.
I don't do anything.
the wisdom was not quite as much, but you'd have found things.
Exactly, sir. But it'd be nice to have you write your books, though. I think it would be good to get a book from you. It'd be great to get a few books of you, sir. Yeah. I've always wondered why a lot of successful Nigerian businessmen don't write enough books. We need books. We read a lot more from the likes of from foreign founders, but not enough.
No, you're right. But remember, there's a quote I gave earlier. I said, if you can't write something worth reading, then do something worth writing.
I agree. If you can't write something worth reading, read something worth writing. So over to, we're waiting for that book. Good observation, Ugo. So we're waiting for that book so that we can, read something worth, writing.
Absolutely. So Ugo, help me. You have a book behind you, so I'm with you all the way.
Absolutely. It's been a session, and I have learned a lot listening to all the speakers, listening to UPO, Ugo, and Adesola, who has just left because she has a 3 o'clock meeting. So thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next year, as speakers or as sponsors this time. So see you in 2023.
All right, bye.
Look forward to it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So we have come to the end of the first session, which is the business session, and we'll be moving on to the technology session. And before, if you're planning to leave us, please don't. We have another engaging session, and we have business leaders from the technology space who would be talking on how businesses can embrace technology for business sustainability. And I'll be handing over to my co-moderator, Anne. But before I do that, we'll take a quick message, and the next face you would see would be Anne. So thank you, and please stay tuned.